joined in studio by Bills reporter Maddy Glab, who this time of year has a sole focus, and it is the mock drafts in cyberspace. Soup to nuts. She is all over them, covering them all, compiling them all. The Excel spreadsheet is in full effect right now.
I have it open right now on my laptop.
See, I knew it.
You guys are worried about the March Madness brackets.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the mock drafts.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Fun.
Let's go.
So, all right, why don't you just give us the overview here.
All right.
First, I guess before we get to names, is there an overriding position that is ruling pick 30 for the Bills?
All right, so I've tracked about 60 so far, and
60.
I want to say right off the bat, we started tracking them after the season was over, so think late January, and right off the bat we saw a lot of defensive linemen getting mocked to the Bills. After free agency, the first wave of free agency, you usually start to see a shift because the roster picture starts to become a little bit more clear. Defensive tackles are still getting mocked to the Bills at a very high rate post first wave of free agency. So the favorite position group is defensive line. Out of the 60 we have tracked, 31 times a defensive lineman is heading to Buffalo with a 30th overall pick. If you break it down between defensive tackles and edge rushers, 23 defensive tackles to 8 edge rushers.
Heavy D tackle.
Heavy D tackle.
All right.
Next up is cornerback. Cornerback has been mocked to Buffalo 13 different times. So we are starting to see safeties and cornerbacks and defensive tackles seem like that is the favorite post the first wave of free agency. Wide receiver is not far behind. 8 times wide receiver is in third place right now.
That's right up there with
I got to tell you,
ends. Jeez.
Yeah.
Even these national guys, all they do is tune into One Bills Live and listen to our show, and that's where they make it.
That's where they get all their information.
We've been talking about
a little presumptuous, Steve. It's a little presumptuous.
It's all about us.
Like, I know what we're talking about.
Exactly. But that's exactly the way our show has gone. It's all about defensive tackles, defensive ends, or safeties, or corners, or whatever, and and the occasional wide receiver gets thrown in as a so in case the everybody eats mantra goes different. That's where we're at.
But Steve and I were talking about this, though, Maddy, because there is some belief that, and history will tell us this is probably true too, that the big guys usually go early. Mm-hmm. And knowing that, and knowing the Bills are picking 30, the value could very well be at corner or safety. So I'm not terribly surprised that you're telling me that those two are growing in popularity.
Yeah, we're seeing players like Malachi Starks, Nick Eamon-Worry, Trey Amos.
Amos is in the first round now.
Some of the names that I'm seeing being mocked to Buffalo. Trey Amos has been mocked to the Bills twice in the last 15 that I've tracked. So he's become a name that's popped up a little bit more. Out of defensive backs, the favorite is Nick Eamon-Worry right now, being mocked to Buffalo 5 times.
Would you say more of these safety corner mocks have come in the last couple of weeks here, or were they spread throughout your info gathering process here?
They've been spread throughout.
Okay.
I am seeing if we bunch them together in defensive backs and combine the two, we're seeing more defensive backs be mocked to Buffalo post the first wave of free agency.
Right. Well, after you sign
Bosa,
and you draft and you sign Bosa, Ogunjobi, and Hoyt, and it's like, okay, now they're full.
Right now, it's defensive tackle, safety, and cornerback is what we're seeing a lot of since March 10th. I'll say is the latest ones.
When you look at some of these websites, I'm thinking that the value is going to, like Brownie said, corner is going to be, there's going to be some value on the board when you get to 30th, and there's going to be some value at safety because it's hard, and I'm going to go back and look if I can to see how many safeties get picked on average in the first round. Mm-hmm. There's 3 of them that are really good. This Nick Eamon-Worry that we've been talking about, Malachi Starks, of course, we've been talking about, and then Xavier Watts as well. Yeah. Those 3 guys, to me, are guys that are going to push to start right out of the gate. And, gosh, I have a hard time thinking one of them is not going to be there.
I know, and
That like not a single one of those three guys is going to be
you think
there.
about when a run on a position is going to start, and Brownie, you mentioned it, the big guys usually go early. If Buffalo deems like we need another defensive tackle because we have one that's going to miss the first 6 games of the season,
Yeah.
maybe they decide to move with when the run on defensive tackles
move up,
begins. They
you're
decide
saying.
to move up
Okay.
to go get one of those defensive tackles.
Yeah, I don't think you can rule it
Or
out.
maybe safety and cornerback is going to look great because everybody's busy taking a defensive tackle to where some of these safeties and
pushed down.
corners get pushed down a few
Yeah.
picks.
And then, well, then you got to figure out too, if the Bills are going to pick at, 56 and 62, they might think, if we wait, we're going to be okay back there getting one of these other guys that we
Well, yeah,
like. You know what I mean?
They're going to look at their board and see what
They're
it
going to look at
looks
their
like
board and they're going to say, when it gets to 56 and 62, we're still going to be sitting pretty on this other position, so let's grab it now. Let's take this guy now or whatever. Where the rest of your picks are has a lot to do with what
Yeah.
you feel like you need to go and where the value of the board is going to be.
All right, so with defensive tackle, the most popular position pick, let's go through some of the names
Yeah.
now, Maddie, that are popping up at the defensive tackle position for the Bills at 30.
So I'll give you some names and we'll run through them. I'll get your take on these guys too. But the far and away favorite right now heading to Buffalo at number 30 is Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. He's been mocked to the Bills 11 times so far. This name has not dropped off since we've been through that first wave of free agency. We are still consistently seeing him mocked to Buffalo at 30. This guy is 6'4", 331 pounds, has 6.5 sacks in his career. He had 3 sacks last season. 2024, he was second team All-American and second team All-Big Ten. He's got incredible physical traits. Big build, quick feet, violent hands. You can see when he hits somebody, it hurts. He offers position flexibility too. And this is the type of player who's going to help end plays before they get out of hand because of his ability to go chase somebody down. That's why a lot of people love Kenneth Grant, is his ability to chase, his ability to drop into things, his quickness with his size. 6'4", 331, and he has very quick feet. He's not going to give up until the play is over. What do you guys think about Kenneth Grant?
If he's there, yes, but he won't be.
A lot of people at the Combine were telling us they don't think he's going to last that long.
He's that good. He is that good. If he's there at 30th,
I mean,
yes,
the first thing...
that's the guy, I would agree.
After I watched him, the first thing I wrote is moves with uncommon fluidity for a man his size. Nobody that's 331 pounds should move like that.
Yes.
I mean, I'm watching him string out stretch plays to the sideline.
It's
and
crazy.
He's getting there, and he's 331 pounds. That
Yeah,
just,
he's big. Now, he's a guy that and we had a caller earlier that said, you need a guy like Ted Washington in this draft. This guy's, he's not as big, but he moves. He
moves and he
well.
bends
and
and-
he's got some athleticism. He plays with some violence, like you said. He's got a high energy about his play.
And when you see that on tape and you see a kid who's 331 pounds and moves like that and the
Right.
effort is there and the motor is there, you start to think about, wow, this type of DNA fits in Buffalo, fits with our culture that we have here. But like you both say, who knows if he's going to be available at number 30, because while I have tracked mock drafts where he's heading to Buffalo, I have seen a bunch where he's
Yeah.
getting picked in the 20s.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I had him as my third best defensive tackle. I can't see the third best defensive tackle in the class going 30th. I think he's going to be gone long before that. All right,
in this class, yeah, they've got him. I've seen him as high as 21. It's here's the.
it's going to be a tough.
The
ask.
real question is, what if he drops to like 24 to Minnesota?
Yeah, Steve's already dreamt up the trade up with
He's already-
Minnesota. 'Cause
Right.
Minnesota only
Putting
has,
picks together. Well,
well-
if you give them this and this, we can move up
because
5
Minnesota
spots.
only has 4 picks, so
Right.
he
Or
thinks
if he
they would
moves
be
up-
very amenable to
Okay.
doing
The
a
problem
deal.
is at 21 is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a lot of people think they're the people that are going to take Kenneth Grant at 21.
Yeah, 'cause they
You
need
can't.
line help.
The Bills are not going to be able to trade up to 21. It's just too expensive to do that.
All right, who is name number 2 at defensive tackle?
All right.
Maddie?
Well, if Kenneth Grant isn't your soup du jour, maybe Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss is another big defensive tackle, 6'4", 296 pounds, 11 and a half sacks in his career, 6.5 sacks last season, a career high for Nolen, a consensus All-American in 2024. Once Nolen gets going, he has a motor that is so tough to stop. A powerful body. You see that in his legs and his hands. It helps him win those one-on-one matchups. Nolen has some really nice bend to rip and get off blocks. That's what stood out to me when I watched some of his highlights. How do you think Nolen could fit in Buffalo's defense?
I liked his versatility at Ole Miss. He went from 7 tech all the way inside to 1 tech. So Ole Miss clearly thought he was capable of handling that. I don't know if he can be quite that versatile, especially if he's right around 300 pounds. But he definitely has some position flex, which the Bills like. Mm-hmm. He also has a very long build. He's just long all the way through, long arms. The Bills like tall, long, lanky players. So is this like a guy that plays a classic left defensive end position, like a Phil Hansen type, in a 4-3? I don't know. But I will say the guy does a good job working off stunts. He had real good timing with his teammates on stunts, because a lot of times I saw him coming free off of stunts, and a lot of times it was because he timed it right, waited till the offensive lineman fell asleep for half a second, and then shot the gap and made the play in the backfield.
Yeah, I like the strength, his upper body strength. He seems to have great, when guys, he's like a machine. Once he grips onto you, you're not getting away until he lets go. I like that about him. You're not going to get any yards after contact, trying to break his tackle. You watch his film, nobody breaks tackles on the guy. Even quarterbacks, once he's got him, and that's a little thing. Yeah, he is not as good as Kenneth Grant to me.
No.
But may well be available at number 30.
Many of his sacks were, I felt, of the coverage variety more than him being so disruptive and getting to the quarterback quickly. Mm-hmm. So he'll push the pocket, but I don't know if he's going to get the quarterback on the ground a whole lot. So that's kind of some of the things I saw with him. All right, and what do we got? One more name?
One more. A defensive tackle out of Oregon, Derrick Harmon. He had 8.5 sacks in his career, 5 sacks last year, a second-team AP All-American honors in 2024. This is a defensive tackle who is a run stopper. Harmon pops into lanes to make sure the play ends there. His frame takes up a lot of space, which frees up his edge rushers and linebackers up to go get the quarterback. He has some size and strength to move people around. That's kind of what stood out to me when watching his tape. Ran a 4.95 at the combine, so he can move. Played 3 seasons at Michigan State before moving over to Oregon. What strikes you about Derrick Harmon?
Great hands. Almost every snap, he's making contact with the offensive lineman first, and that allows a defensive lineman to dictate how that snap's going to play out. I found it interesting that they would move him out on the edge at times and then kick him back inside on more obvious rundowns. He's got 2 moves that I really like. He's got a one-arm stab move. He's just naturally strong. Mm-hmm. So he's got this one-arm stab move where he just walks a lineman back with one arm. And then he's got a rip move. And then he's got a step to the edge move that kind of allows him to get on the shoulder of linemen. And then he squeezes through creases and gets penetration. But for a guy that goes 310, super light on his feet.
Yeah, I thought for a guy 310, he's slippery at times. You know what I mean? He's got good bend. I like his pass rush as well as Kenneth Grant or Walter Nolen. I think his pass rush technique is better than any of the guys we've discussed. I think he's the best one at that. And he's got a little bit more weight than like Walter Nolen or one of the other guys. Not as much as Kenneth Grant,
right.
But
kind of in between size-wise.
Yeah, I like
Nolen
him better as a pro prospect because of his pass rush moves and his athleticism off the edge and his, like Brownie said, you can kind of dip him down inside or take him to the edge. I like that about him, and he does that at a little heavier weight. he's also heavy. I mean tall. He's got
Yeah.
good size, good height as well.
And
So
he
I
played
like
in
him.
He played in a physical conference, 3 years in the Big Ten. Then he goes to Oregon, and Oregon's in the Big Ten. So he's right back in the same conference. They still run the ball a lot
Yeah.
in the Big Ten. So there's plenty
That's
of
a
good
great
tape
point.
on him in terms of, being a
Yeah.
force in the run front, and he is that.
Of the three we've talked about, Kenneth Grant, Derrick Harmon, Walter Nolen, I put him Grant, and then this guy, Derrick Harmon, and then
Yeah.
Nolen behind these two.
Yep.
I like Harmon better than I like Nolen, just because of the way he plays, the way he's built, and the kind of what he brings to like you said, the first contact right down inside, the energy level he brings, the hands he uses, and his athleticism seems to come out more in his pass rush than the other guy.
Yeah. I like both of those guys more than Nolen seems a little limited in the ways in which you can use him, even though I was mentioning how he worked all up and down the line. I kind of got the sense that Ole Miss wasn't sure what his best position was, so they tried him at a bunch of different spots.
I think when you do start seeing him do that even in the SEC, it's because he may be their best option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Most talented guy.
Right. He may be. They're just leaning on his physical talent. I don't know that to be
Yeah.
the case, but it seems to me like when you get down in, not so much in the SEC, although it happens. You get he's staying on the field, and he's playing here because this other guy plays better over here, and he's good
Yeah.
enough. You know what I mean?
And the other thing, too, not that he couldn't fix this by eating a couple extra meals, but the Bills already have an undersized guy in Ed Oliver up front there on the interior. I
Right.
don't think you want to have another guy that's sub 300, which, Nolen is, at least right now. I mean, he's 4 pounds from being 300. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but he's a little bit lighter than these guys. And I think the Bills are probably going to draft 2 defensive tackles when it's all said and done. One guy's got to be a space eater, like
Yeah.
a big, huge 320-plus
Yes.
guy. And then if the
Yes.
other guy's a penetrator and he's about 305, 310, fine. But you got to get one and
If you
one.
can get Kenneth Grant, you're
Well, you
you're
got both.
gold. You
Run
are-
the
you got
pick
the whole
home.
thing.
That's the problem. It's like Brian Thomas Jr. last year, wide receiver. He's not going to be there.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's
Derrick
like Roma Dunze. He's not going to be there.
Yeah. Derrick Harmon, to me, has these physical traits that he's been gifted with, and I think does a better job of using those traits, using his strength and his frame to take up that space and stop the run. Like you said, he's a run stopper. That's what I noticed. And if you're looking at what Buffalo could add to their defense, at times last season, the Bills had a hard time stopping the run. And maybe it wasn't rushing yards per game, but the rushing yards per attempt number sometimes was really high for this team. So to get a space eater and somebody who can really help Ed Oliver move and have some space to do what he needs to do. We think about Ed Oliver when he was a younger player and kind of the players that he worked best off of. I mean, early on it was Star Lotulelei, and then it was
And Jordan Phillips
Daquan-
had his best season
exactly
early in Ed's career.
Daquan Jones in his first season with Buffalo.
Yeah. And more importantly, I think Harmon has a greater chance of still being on the board down in an area where if the Bills can't get him at 30, they could at least move to a spot where they could get him and not pay a giant price to do it.
Yeah, Harmon has been mocked to Buffalo 5 times. Nolen has been mocked to Buffalo 5 times. Grant is 11. So those are your 3 favorite defensive tackles so far that we've tracked.
All right. And this latest edition of Mock Draft Watch goes up tomorrow?
It goes up tomorrow. It's 4.0, so you're going to see a lot of these names that we have talked about in terms of defensive tackles, and then you're going to see those safeties and those cornerbacks sprinkled in, especially as of late.
Okay. Very good, Maddy.
Good stuff,
We will have
Maddy.
you check in with the next edition when it is ready for posting. Look forward to it. See if anything changes
I know
between.
they're coming out once a week now.
Yeah. Fast and furious.
We're ripping, guys. We're getting
Let's
ready.
Appreciate the time. That's Maddy Glab joining us with the latest Mock Draft Watch, which you can find tomorrow on BuffaloBills.com.